All right, we got another key race alert right now. 3% of the vote in New Hampshire now, and Bernie Sanders remains on top with 25.9%. He's 311 votes ahead of Amy Klobuchar. Very tight race, at least right now, for second place. Amy Klobuchar, 22.2%. Pete Buttigieg, 22.1%. Elizabeth Warren, she's down in fourth place, 10.5%. Joe Biden in fifth place, 8.6%. Tulsi Gabbard, 3.3%. Tom Steyer, 3.2%. Andrew Yang, 2.7%, 3% of the vote in. John King, you're looking a lot more closely at these numbers, where they're coming in from.
And the numbers just jumped. As you were walking over, Amy Klobuchar was in second place. Pete Buttigieg just jumped into second place again by a small margin, and we are very early in the vote count. But that's the fun and the excitement of election night, especially in a close race with a crowded field, is we're going to see the wall filling in. Number one, you see the different colors. Study that at home. The light blue is Sanders, the light green is Buttigieg, the darker green is Klobuchar. We'll see if anybody else gets on the map in any of these townships in terms of winning as we go through it. Again, 625 votes ahead. We're very, very early in the vote count. We got a long way to go. But what do we see? I'm just going to pull this up and stretch it out just a little bit as we go. What do we see so far? Number one, I talked about this earlier. This is Keene State. This is a college town. This is where Bernie Sanders must run it up, right? This is where he runs very well with the younger people. Are they turning out? He'll be happy to be in the lead there. It's very early. If this margin holds up, there will be questions about, are some young voters looking for another choice? Or in these college towns, are they looking at other choices? Is Bernie Sanders replicating in this campaign what he could do 4 years ago? That's a hypothetical right now because this is so early, but just something to keep an eye on. Leading where he's supposed to lead. Let's see what the margins are as we get through the night on that one. You move over here to the eastern part of the state. Portsmouth, very important, progressive town. One of the great places to visit in New Hampshire. Interesting mix of voters. A lot of independents out here, undeclared voters, they call them in New Hampshire. Again, Sanders is on top. This is a very different race. It was just Hillary Clinton 4 years ago. Bernie Sanders was the Democratic Socialist, but he was also the opposition to the Democratic establishment. He was the place you went if you didn't want to be with Clinton. You didn't have choices. Now, people have more choices, and you see it spread out a little bit. Again, it's very early. If you're a former vice president of the United States, you do not want to be in single digits. You don't want to be in fourth or fifth either, but you especially don't want to be in single digits. Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts, just into double digits. We'll see how this one plays out. The top three right now, very early. This is a very interesting race. The progressive, two moderates who are trying to say we can appeal to liberals and progressives as well. Portsmouth is, again, very important, but again, look at the margin, 26 to 23 to 21 at the moment. If you go back in time in a two-person race, 13 points. This is more competitive. This is not one of those college towns where Sanders had a blowout. This is more competitive, but that's still a bigger margin as you start to rack up the votes. We'll come back in. I'm going to do a lot of this. Just pop out and see if anything else is filled in as we go. This part up here, you're getting up into the Lake region up here. A lot of people in New Hampshire said, watch to see how Mayor Buttigieg does up in the Lake region. Not quite there yet. You see Senator Sanders here in Thornton. Very close race. We'll keep counting the votes there. Come up here, Moulton Borough. Again, early on, close race. What does this tell you? It just tells you we're going to have to go through this carefully and go through the night. We're very early on, but you see these as these results come in. Some Buttigieg in the center part of the state here. This is important for Senator Klobuchar if she can keep it. We're very early on, but I talked about this earlier. It's the state capital. It's a political establishment town. We know a lot of people decided late. Is this a sign that she had some of that? And then as you come down, we're just waiting. The bulk of the votes. I just want to stretch this out a little bit. You see the light blue filling on over here. This is absolutely critical for Senator Sanders. The more progressive part of the state, right in here. You just talked to Miguel Marquez a short time ago at his polling place in Dover. It's a pretty healthy lead there, 2-1 over your second one there. As that pulls in, we'll see if it stays. And then most of the people, if we're having a late night, if you go back, remember the great 2008 contest. This is Manchester. We have absolutely nothing yet. If you go back to the great 2008 Democratic contest between Hillary Clinton and Senator Obama, you see this is just Manchester, this margin. We were up late that night. A lot of people thought Obama was going to win. He had an early lead. Secretary Clinton came back late. Blue collar tends to vote late. You saw those lines there, people showing up late. Blue collar, gritty city, they tend to vote late there. Now let's come back in time. This was.
I just want to point out.
Remember how close that was.
We're about to get some results from Manchester. Our Athena Jones is there, so fairly soon we're told we're going to get some results from Manchester. It's the largest city in the state.
And that will tell us a lot because, again, I talked about this earlier. I'll just do this quickly and try to get some results. Is this corridor down here, especially for Manchester South, more people, it's suburban. Some of those suburbs, some of these areas are Republican in a general election, but we'll see how the Democrats do there. Or the suburban women who might be independents, undeclared in New Hampshire, moving away from the president. But you do Manchester, you do Merrimack, you do Nashua and Hudson. These are places where Democratic primaries can be won or lost. And what I'm really fascinated as we go through this is, do we continue to see close margins like this from town to town to town, or do we see a candidate start to pull away in any of the regions of the state?
Are you surprised that Elizabeth Warren single digits, still very, very early, and Joe Biden also in single digits right now in 5th place? But I just want to point out, still very early.
The very early part is very important. But I was in New Hampshire over the weekend. There are a lot of Democrats. Remember, over the summertime, Elizabeth Warren was surging, not just nationally, in New Hampshire as well. A lot of people thought she was going to grab the progressive mantle from Bernie Sanders. A lot of people thought New Hampshire could come down to Vermont versus Massachusetts, if you will, Sanders versus Warren, the two neighbors of the state. That's a disappointing number for Elizabeth Warren, who was well organized, had a good staff in New Hampshire, and owned the summer among the Democratic candidates. There were a lot of Democrats, when I was there over the weekend, questioning why she wasn't more active and more busy. She had some events, but she was not as busy and active as, say, Mayor Buttigieg or Senator Klobuchar. So early. If that holds, of course it would be disappointing. The Warren campaign says it has a plan, has a deep organization. It's going on. That would be very disappointing to be from Massachusetts if two Midwesterners come in ahead of you.
It's got to be disappointing for the former vice president.
The fact that I have to reach down and scroll because we only fit 4 candidates in the top there to get to the former vice president, again, it's early. Watch Concord, watch in the Manchester area. There are some older establishment Clinton campaign veterans, for example, who are with Joe Biden. They know how to turn out votes in the state. We'll see if it happens. But the fact that he has moved on to South Carolina tells you they understand their numbers. If you're in single digits and you're 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, not a good place to be if you have former vice president ahead of your name.
I want to go to Athena Jones in Manchester. Athena, you've got results from 1 ward in Manchester out of 12. Is that right?
That's right, Wolf. This is the 12th ward in Manchester. This is led by Bernie Sanders with 555 votes. In second place, Pete Buttigieg at 401. Amy Klobuchar is third with 342 votes. Elizabeth Warren is fourth with 182 votes, and Joe Biden comes in fifth at 162 votes. So that is the totals for those top 5 candidates here at this ward in Manchester, and it falls in line with a lot of what we were hearing from voters throughout the day. A lot of people talking about Bernie Sanders, Pete Buttigieg, and Amy Klobuchar, specifically about being very much impressed by her last couple of debate performances. So that's how this breaks down here. Wolf?
All right, it's one of 12 wards, John, in Manchester. All right, more numbers are about to come in. We're going to stand by for that. Much more of our coverage right after this.